Protests continue in Iran. Biden promised to free Iran at election speech.
So, we found out that a lot of our soldiers, more people are coming back from Iraq.
Students and youth rising. In a rising storm, students and youth are protesting in over 200 towns and cities across Iran. These rallies have been ongoing for 2 months, despite the severe crackdown ordered by the government of President Ebrahim Raisi. There is tremendous support for Iran, with solidarity protests taking place in Europe, the United States, and parts of the Middle East. The protests were triggered by the shocking death of 22-year-old Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini at the hands of the regime's morality police after her arrest for improperly wearing a hijab. These protests had an underlying smoldering fire of discontent over the degenerating social and economic conditions, including heightened unemployment, and the corruption and monopolization of political power by the Shia clerical establishment. Protests that started in the Kurdish provinces soon morphed into wider, anti-government rallies throughout the country. Terrible economic conditions. Inflation in Iran is running at 54% and food prices have risen by more than 100% since President Ebrahim Raisi took office in August last. Iran's youth, 2/3 of Iran's 85 million population, are under 30 years of age and are more severely affected. There is 27% of the population without work, with those in the ethnic minority areas of Sistan, Balochistan and Kurdistan among the worst affected. Brutal attacks on Iranian youth, including Amini's death. As well as the protests over Amini's death, there have been demonstrations in Sistan, Balochistan, near the border with Afghanistan and Pakistan, over the alleged rape of a teenage girl by a police officer. An unprecedented crackdown on the Balochis by the security forces in the provincial capital of Zahedan in late September killed at least 82 people. Security forces have attacked unarmed protesters with live fire, beaten them with batons, and thrown tear gas at funerals, on the streets, and at universities and high schools, killing 318 protesters, including at least 49 children, according to the US-based human rights activists news agency Harana. 38 members of the security forces have been killed. The funerals for the dead have sparked further protests, with young people shouting slogans such as "Death to the Dictator" and "Women, Life, Freedom." Memorial rallies have been held to commemorate the 40th day of mourning for victims in at least 10 cities that were broken up by armed riot police. At least 14,000 people have been arrested, including 392 students. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists said that 54 journalists had been arrested, a dozen of whom were released on bail. On Sunday, legislators called on Iran's judiciary to take decisive action against protesters, whose actions they referred to as riots and seditions, saying that the US was targeting Iran to effect regime change. Protests weakened by working class not involved.
This movement did not catch the attention of the working class, and the youth are largely unsupported by the workers, except for some brief strikes by teachers and oil workers the previous month. While the protests have been smaller than those of 2018 to 2019, they have lasted longer than any since the movement that brought down the Shah's regime, with demonstrators calling for the downfall of the ruling establishment and Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. USA is blamed for the protests. Some leading figures have called for dialogue with the protesters, with Grand Ayatollah Hossein Nouri Hamadani urging the government to listen to the people's demands. The former Speaker of the Majlis, now a senior advisor to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Ali Larijani said, the government in Tehran badly needs to listen to the other side. American involvement. The fall in living conditions due to the brutal sanctions regime imposed by Washington after the Trump administration unilaterally abandoned the 2015 nuclear accords. While the incoming Biden administration claimed it wanted to restore the deal, the talks have been stalled by the ever-increasing demands from Washington, coming to a halt in September. Amid provocative military threats and actions, President Joe Biden has sought to establish an anti-Iran alliance of the Gulf states, Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, and Israel. Tehran has repeatedly blamed the US and Israel for orchestrating the protests and accused Western intelligence agencies, including the Shia, of instigating the violence, fueling ethnic and religious tensions, and collaborating with exiled Kurdish groups. Last week, in a joint statement with the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, Iran's intelligence service accused two female Iranian journalists who publicized Amini's death of being foreign agents trained by the US to create chaos, leading to their arrest and detention by the authorities. Iran has also accused Saudi Arabia of instigating the unrest via the funding of its Persian language network, Iran International, which has reported the protests extensively. At the end of last month, the Biden administration revealed a new tranche of sanctions targeting commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a provincial governor, and other Iranian officials involved in Tehran's crackdown. Canada, the UK, and European Union followed suit. Washington has also given internet software companies permission to bypass sanctions to provide space-access satellite internet service Starlink to the Iranian market to evade state restrictions on the internet. Speaking at an election campaign rally in California recently, Biden promised to free Iran, adding that the protesters would free themselves pretty soon. How the USA will free Iran is yet to be seen.
So, we found out that a lot of our soldiers, more people are coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, with serious brain injuries and tumors than any other war in American history. Other than the Civil War, maybe more amputees are coming back than in any wars in American history. And those burn pits, don't worry, we're going to free Iran. They're going to free themselves pretty soon.
Nations are weakened by their own internal politics and policies, and the Iranian government needs to take their youth seriously. Iranian Nobel Peace Prize laureate Shirin Ebadi, speaking on the protests and Iran's future, said, "They want a democracy.